So I'm in the back garden today and I'm doing some planning at the moment for what I'm going to sow in July. So I thought I'd take you through that sowing database. And a lot of my thoughts now are directed at winter and spring. In fact, quite a lot of my winter stuff is in now. And so actually more of my thinking now is about what I'm going to grow for an abundant spring. But also, of course, I'm thinking about autumn. So a lot of long-term planning in gardening. So I've got my little database here on my iPad and I'm going to take you through what's going on in spring. So let's take a look. So first up on the list are potatoes. Now I've got a lot of potatoes in the ground at the moment. I think I've got 40 tubs of potatoes, and those are mainly my last few second earlies and my main crops. So what I'm sowing this month in July are my salad potatoes that we're going to start harvesting sometime in November probably, and we'll harvest those all the way through until April. We leave them in the compost so they'll die back sort of October time. Just take the tops off and just leave them in the containers stacked up. I normally just put them in my mini greenhouse because I'm not using it for anything at that time of year. And I just leave them in there in the compost, nice and moist. And as I say, when we harvest them in April, they're pretty much as good as they are in sort of October, November time. They just keep really well and they're lovely salad potatoes. And that means that we don't have to grow early salad potatoes. So our first early salad potatoes come about in the middle of April, something like that. So not very early at all. But it means we have a nice continuity of salad potatoes all the way through the year. So next up on the list are marathon and green sprouting broccoli. And we really prefer broccoli, I must admit, to cauliflower. It's so much easier to grow, it's quicker to grow. The Calabrese is a fairly short-lived harvest. You get the central head and then a few side shoots over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But the green sprouting broccoli can last quite a bit longer, so you can get a harvest from that for a couple of months probably as we go into winter. So that's why I'm growing those two. So next on my list are the Touchon carrots. Now, I really like Touchon. They're one of the better carrots for leaving in the ground for a long period of time. This batch actually we're going to grow in containers, just 3 containers full. And those are the ones we're going to be eating in April. And that allows us, we find that in containers, because we can keep them out of the drenching rain in winter and out of the worst of the cold, we just bung them in the polytunnel and just stack them up. They just keep a little bit better than the ones outside, and as a result, and they've got less slugs and things like that. And as a result, we can get really nice carrots all the way through April, and then our early crop of carrots comes towards the end of April, May. So again, we get a nice continuity. So we've got loads of carrots in the ground at the moment. So these few in containers are just to see us through, as I said, just that really late period from late March to sort of the end of April. And the ones in the ground do well up until then, so no problem at all. So next up are a whole range of different kales. Now again, we've got loads of kales in the ground. We've got our first early kales, which are going to seed now, but they provided a fantastic kind of early harvest from sort of May through to, well, I'll probably take them out of the ground towards the end of July, something like that, because I want to put my purple sprouting broccoli in that spot. But I like doing an early crop of kale because it does mean that when everybody else's kale is kind of going to seed, my early crop is at its peak, and so it means again a nice continuity of harvest. And I like Black Magic is my favourite variety for that early crop, sown in January, planted out sort of late February, early March time, and as I said, nice prolific harvest in May. What I also find though is that if I do a crop of kale now, and I'm doing quite a nice range, I'm doing Reflex, Scarlet, Dwarf Green, Sympathetic, Nero Black Magic and Pentland Brig, so that's a nice selection. If I do it now, then it doesn't go to seed quite as early in sort of April, May time, and that's pretty useful because we don't grow a lot of other brassicas at that time of year. We do have spring cabbage and things like that, but we don't have enough space really to dedicate to growing things like cauliflower over winter. We will of course have, you know, calabrese and things like that, but and purple sprouting broccoli, so we'll have quite a nice range. But really this late sown kale is going to be our mainstay kale harvest in sort of late winter and through spring. So that's the kales. So then we're on to spring onions. Now I don't think spring onions do very well in midsummer. I'm always trying different varieties to see if I can get a decent crop, but I am doing something different this year, which I'll talk about in August, which tries to get me a nice, really great salad onion in August. But anyway, I keep on trying different ones. I'm trying ramrod this year as a summer spring onion. As I say, I'm not a massive fan really of summer spring onions, but I do like them every day, so I'm always trying to find something that's good. Generally what we end up doing in midsummer is just harvesting, you know, young tender red onions and chopping those up in the salads. That's perfectly good. So next one are the chards. I'm doing Bright Lights and Rhubarb Chard. And again, these are quite late, and I might actually end up direct sowing these. So I normally do everything in modules, but I'm going to have a bed come free, and I've got nothing to plant in it, and I'm intending to plant chard in it, so I might direct sow them. And that'll be nice because chard, I mean, it does transplant okay, although some books say that it doesn't, but it does. But I think maybe it does a little bit better direct seeded. Anyway, this is just an opportunity to see you know, if there is a difference. I might do one bed planted from modules and one bed direct seeded and just see what the difference is. But these are going to go in a deep cold frame. Obviously the cold frame lid won't be on in summer, but I'll probably put the cold frame lid on in about sort of November time. And I find I get 2 to 3 times the yield by having it under cover that I do from the outside beds. So chard is fine, it'll survive most winters, although it can be damaged by if there's a really bad wind chill. But it's all about the harvesting for me. It's not about whether it survives or not. You know, chard will survive, as I said, over winter, no problem, and come back in spring. But I want a nice continuous harvest, so a deep cold frame does it for me. So next up are a nice batch of lettuces. And I'm trying some new ones here, ones that I'm hoping to grow actually over winter. And I'm again always trying new winter varieties of lettuce. There's no problem with getting great lettuce for the rest of the year, but over winter there's not many varieties that do well for me in my environment. So anyway, I've got quite a range there. I've got a Lollo, I've got Trento, I've got classic Grenoble Red or Red Grenoble, whichever way you want to talk about it. And then a new red lettuce, Outrageous, which is a pretty corny title, grown in space apparently. But anyway, I got those seeds for free. I've got some Novara and I've got some Canasta. Now I know Canasta doesn't do very well in winter, but anyway, we'll try these. Obviously, if I don't like them in autumn, I'm not going to grow them in winter, but let's see what they're like. And what else? Onions, right? So we grow a lot of main crop onions, but what we find is that we're running out of good quality stored onions in April. We switch over then to big spring onions, and we eat those big spring onions through until about the beginning of June, maybe middle of May, something like that. And at that point we start harvesting these onions that I'm starting now, which are tough ball, and I really like Tough Ball, they just do so well for me. They never go to seed. They always give me really great onions towards the end of May and early June, and I'll harvest those, and it allows me to get the bed cleared and replanted with something like the winter squash, and yeah, they just do great. I do one batch in the polytunnel and I do one batch outside. The ones in the polytunnel come about 3 weeks earlier than the ones outside, so again, it's all about a nice continuous harvest period for me. One other thing to mention about a Tough Ball is don't sow all your seeds at once. So I think it's a really good idea to sow one batch towards the end of July and then sow another batch towards the end of let's start again. We do one batch towards the end of July and one batch towards the beginning of August, and I do that just in case there's kind of freak weather conditions that result in one of those batches going to seed. You never know which one it's going to be, and so by doing those two, you're always pretty confident that you're going to get a decent number, and if you get a few extra, that's fine. So do twice as many as you need. There's always spare space in the ground over winter, and if you end up with too many, as I said, you can always harvest them early as, you know, sort of golf ball size, or you can harvest them as spring onions, or you can just leave them to mature, or you can even let them go to seed, because going to seed is no big deal. You know, you can just chop them up and freeze them or use them fresh. So first batch of spring cabbages, so I don't like to do any spring cabbages until the end of July, and then I'll do another batch in August, and I'll probably do some more actually even later on in the season, sort of October time, and I'll keep those in pots in the polytunnel, plant them out in spring. Helicopter going over here. We're just very close to an airport here, so we're always getting loads and loads of aircraft flying over, which makes video making quite a challenge sometimes. That, along with the building site, which is right adjacent to the allotment, which is why I'm making this video in the back garden today. So next one, Tokyo cross turnips. So I don't really like doing radishes and turnips in summer, for harvest in summer. I just don't think the taste is, you know, I've been eating radishes since March, and to be honest, I'm just fed up with them and I like a break. But I'd say I don't think the quality is that great in summer either. They're easy to grow, but, you know, for me it's about quality. So I don't start my radishes until August again, the ones I'm going to be harvesting in September. But the turnips, you can start those now, and again we'll be harvesting those in September. So towards the end of July, I'll start my first batch of turnips, and then we'll do continuous turnips until about early middle of September, something like that. And you can do quite a lot actually in September because they hold in the ground pretty well. So you can still be eating turnips through until December time from that sowing, and then we'll restart those again sort of February time for a nice early harvest in late March, April, something like that. So I think that is pretty much everything that I'm going to be sowing in July, and it's a very relaxing time for me, to be honest, July. And well, June, July and August, we really take a break from gardening in summer, hence I don't get to make that many videos. To me, at this time, all I'm really doing is watering and harvesting, very little planting to do. It's very relaxing, but then everything starts to pick up with the sowing in August, and of course we're doing a lot of sowing, getting ready for autumn and winter and spring. So with that, I think we'll close up. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.